I hope it will be interesting for you because it's extremely boring what the politicians are able to produce for all of us and how they create the problems. Always there is the positive intention. It's very important to remember. They want to improve their position in Brussels because many changes, as for example, dispatch vehicles, it was introduced in the 5th Motor Insurance Directive, was proposed by the European Commission because one of the very high officials moved from Portugal to Brussels and needed to pay higher premium for the vehicle. So he complained at the European Commission, and as a result, they introduced new provision regarding the dispatch vehicles. So if you think that many of the proposals they are now to improve the position of the victims and the owners of the cars, maybe you have the illusion this is the truth. On the other hand, when you ask the people what was the background of some proposals, they will not able to explain to you what was exactly at the background. So as you see, I'm rather critical, but this is not only first time we are faced with what to say, crazy ideas, not to, how to say, be too rude, crazy ideas. And always we have the same explanation. We want to improve the rights of the customers. I'm in favor of improving the customers' rights, and I'm doing this every day, running the Motor Insurance Bureau, and this is our main task, to serve to the victims and to the insured person. But I think we must be realistic what is possible and what really will improve the rights of the customers. And always we need to remember that if we want to change something, it will cost. When you will go through the documents, they were produced by European Commission and later on by European Parliament, there is black on white written that will not cost any single euro more. This will have no single influence on the financial stability of the insurance, and there will be no influence on the activity of the member states. What is obvious, from obvious reasons, not true. Somebody is a liar, or somebody is doing a big mistake. How is it possible to do it? Especially now, when there are some institutions they will be introduced. We will see if they will be introduced. But what you see on the screen, that is, I think, what we should think about. That's our responsibility of all the insurance industry, including non-profit organizations and guarantee funds or national bureaus, associations, and so on, is to give a practical support, not theoretical written in the directives of national law. Because we have many examples that there are many ideas materialized in a legislation, but what does it mean in fact? Is the position of the victims, of the insured persons, better than was before? Usually not. And what is very, very frequently forgotten, that we are not serving only to the victims. We are speaking about the motor third-party liability, and what was mentioned before during the first part of our session. Not many people care about the rights of the victims. For them, it's only important how much they will pay for the cover. But our responsibility is going in both directions, to give the security to the owner, driver of the car, and to the victim if the accident finally will happen. In fact, in Europe, we have now two systems. The first one is the green card system, and the second one is the protection of visitors system. This second one, based on a motor insurance directive, I mean the 4th Motor Insurance Directive, it introduced some new regulations in year 2000. And as you see in the screen, this is also, I think, very important to remember that the first system, green card system, it exists in Europe, celebrates this year's 70th anniversary. And this is non-profit, non-political organization, and this is the reason this organization could be efficient, because the politicians, they don't have any influence on our activity. And what is also very important, the system based on a system of protection of visitors. It means based on claims representatives, compensation by the information centers, will celebrate soon 20 years. And we have positive and negative experience on this field as well. So, in this moment in Europe, we have many countries, we have many national laws, many levels of the compensation to the victims, but this is one Europe with two systems. Now going slowly to the directives, I would like to draw your attention on two directives. It seems they are not so important, because usually we are speaking about the motor insurance directive. But this first directive from '92 and the second directive from 2009 regarding the solvency, they have, both of them, they have very important influence on the rights of the victims and the insured persons. Why? I will tell you a bit later. But regarding motor insurance directive, you see that the first one was passed in year 1972 and the last one in year 2005. That's from 2009, there was only the consolidation of the 5 directives before, and no single amendment was those days introduced. And now, after so many years, 14 years from the last directive, we see there are some ideas to introduce some changes, also some new provisions. They were not tackled before during the deliberation or discussion in the past. Some of them, they were on a table, as for example, the responsibility in the case of the accident caused by the trailers, or prescription periods, but they were refused in the year 2005, and they were not included to this directive. But at this moment, when we are talking about the motor insurance directive, we are in this point. The proposal was formulated by the European Commission, was accepted, was transferred to the European Parliament, and a few weeks ago, Parliament introduced own amendments to the original proposal and referred back to the committee responsible, the European Commission. So, in fact, we don't know what will be the final version of the directive, but it seems they will be introduced some important changes and new proposals. They will complicate our life. And not only our life, the life of the victims and insured persons as well. Who will be involved in this whole system? It's mentioned in this draft of the directive. Of course, national bureaus, compensation bodies, information centers, insurance guarantee funds, and EUCARIS. You know what is EUCARIS? This is European organization of the national state registration authorities, registration of vehicles. This is the idea of EUCARIS is to collect all the data, or maybe not directly collect, but to have one central access to all the countries via using modern technologies. This has very important, very high importance. because some proposals in the directive refer directly to the activity of Eucharis. If it's realistic or not, we will see, but at least I can say I have real doubts if Eucharis is able at this moment to deliver any service to any national authorities. So, what are the ideas behind why they formulated a new directive? The first, what is not on a screen, but we must be realistic. The time is running. What was in year 2005 is now the history. We are using the provisions from the past, and it works. Generally, it works. We have some problems, especially regarding the Ford Motor Insurance Directive. This is a crucial point at this moment because it's really, really complicated, and I think that the members of the parliament those days were not realistic enough, and the provisions introducing very long time limits, in fact, they don't help to the victims to receive the compensation on time. When you have the provisions giving 3 months to give the reasoned reply, then 2 months to answer to the compensation body, and then there is the possibility to start all the procedure, it means that after 1 year the victim can receive the compensation. So unfortunately, instead to discuss how to improve what was exactly introduced many years ago, they are coming with new ideas because, you know, probably they think we know better. We knew better what we introduced, and now we are knowing better how this works, what is totally unrealistic. Anyway, some of these ideas you see on the screen seem to be very positive. All of them, in fact, because we want to fight against fraud. We want to fight against uninsured driving, especially that we know that is almost 1 billion euro. 1 billion euro we are losing every year because of tolerating uninsured drivers. And why not to give more rights to the victims, and why not to have more data to improve the standards of tariffication, to have better tariffs? Why not? This should be the help for the insurers as well. But when we are going through the proposals as such, this is not so optimistic. Just a small remark. Michael will speak about the Motor Insurance Directive as well. So we agreed that I will not tackle certain aspects, just you will see on the screen. It doesn't mean that I don't know what I want to say. This is only the coordination between us. So the guarantee limits, random check of controls, claims history, liability of trailers, prescription period, use in traffic, bankruptcy, price comparison tool, a very funny story. And, but the most important is that the law must be equal for all types of the vehicles. This is behind. But if this will be in the future, in the reality, I have real doubts knowing the text of the proposal after the changes proposed by the European Parliament. The scope of cover, I will not talk about what does mean to be in use, but the most important change regarding the scope of cover is that they decided to include the terrorist attacks or vulnerable activities as a part of the normal scope of the cover. up to the limits they are mentioned in the directive. Why? Maybe you remember a few years ago, this was a very tragic accident. It was in fact a terrorist act in Berlin during the Christmas market. And many people were killed, many were injured. We don't need to talk about the property claims. And the Polish truck was used as a weapon. The driver was killed by the terrorist, and the terrorist drove by this truck in a group of the people. And this was a very specific situation after that, that we discover suddenly that we have different provisions in Europe. In some countries, such activity, such reason of the accident is excluded from the normal cover, as in Germany, for example. What is in contradiction to the situation we have in Poland, neighboring country, where every activity of every driver is included in the scope of the motor third-party liability. So we see there are two different legal status in the same, in the case of the same type of the accident. And what is behind? The idea is that in such situation we must protect the victims. If there wouldn't be any other solution on a German market, that's all the victims and the relatives of the killed people would stay without any compensation. It would be really tragic, again, for them. Fortunately, there is another possibility. According to totally different legal act in Germany, it gives the opportunity to satisfy partially the victims and the relatives of the killed people. But this is totally outside of the Motor Third-Party Liability Act. So, because we realized that, and we know for sure, that similar acts were planned, and fortunately, the police reacted on time. This was in Stockholm, this was in Vienna and some other, maybe you remember in Nice there was an accident, yes, exactly. So there was the deliberation if we should harmonize the responsibility in this area. You know, from the beginning, I'm rather critical to this proposal, but exactly in this part, I'm fully in favor, because it would be, I'm treating this unfair, that such type of the risk is excluded. Doesn't matter who will pay the compensation, the guarantee fund, or it will be paid from the insurance policy. This is not important. The most important that the victims could be satisfied. So this will be a substantial change. You can check your national law, how is the situation at this moment. But of course, this was very funny. It is a short anecdote. When we analyzed this, this situation after the accident in Berlin, somebody said suddenly, but of course they will pay, but they will have the recourse right against the terrorist organization. Yes, maybe it seems, yes, it's funny, really funny, but theoretically, yes. Even this person who was responsible, it was killed in this case, as we know, would be a prisoner, would never pay the money back, because we are talking about the millions of euros in this case. But theoretically, it exists such right. So, but this is a bit different story if I want to kill my mother-in-law, and if I will use my car and by chance I will push her to the wall of my house, this could be treated as an accident, but could be treated also as a crime. in such case, I will be obliged to pay the money back to the insurance company because of the Polish law. This act will be covered by the normal third-party liability policy. What is not the same situation in many European countries. So you see, we will have a big change. What will have also the impact on the pricing, especially of the reinsurance cover. And we see that our colleagues from reinsurance companies, they're really afraid to pay the claims, instead to receive the premium. But this is the same with the clients. They need to pay the premium for the cover and don't care about paying the claims to the victims. So the specific type of the vehicles Michael will cover. And regarding the insurance guarantee sum, in a directive was mentioned before that every certain years, 5 years, they must be revised the level of the insurance guarantee sum. So this time it was introduced to over 6 million per accident, or 1,220,000 in property damage, but another option in bodily injury is to 1,220,000 per person, but then is multiplied per number of the persons. What I think about it, generally the tendency is very positive. We know that maybe the inflation as such, it's not very high, but the inflation of cost of life and the expectations of the people is much higher. So I think this is not a bad proposal. I have only real doubts since many, many years, and I presented these doubts many times, that the guarantee sum regarding the property damage is too low. It's too low, and we know from the praxis that the claim, especially the property claim, can be much, much higher. And there is the question, if something happens, who will pay the rest? We know that in our days, a big house could cost more. Depends on the country. If I have my palace in Monaco, it will be more expensive. But if somebody has a cottage in Bohemia, will be less expensive. But average property is now more expensive than was before. Now, regarding Eucharis, this is the specific problem, because the idea is to introduce a random check based on a discretion. So it should be, they should use now modern technology, cameras, screen, and automatic contact via Eucharis to the national database. So the question to you is very simple. Do you think it is really realistic in our days that we can introduce such solution that the police in Great Britain, this is a very bad example. No. I'm not thinking about Brexit instinct or something. We don't know. The story is that they introduced something similar. So the police is equipped with the special cameras and interfaces. They communicate online with the central database of the registered and insured vehicles. So exactly, this is a positive example. But we know, and I will not give any names of any country, that in several countries, even there is something what we can call central database of the registered or insured vehicles. It's only theoretical. This is the first. Secondly, this is the question, what is in the database? What type of the data? And the third, are we able to equip all the police cars in all the countries with special cameras and interfaces? And are we able to communicate online from country to country, from the vehicle of the policeman to the central information center, let's say in Poland, when the British policeman wants to check if the vehicle was insured or not? Do you think it's realistic? And what was written in the directive, in the proposal? They will have no single influence on the finances of the insurance industry. And who will pay for it? Of course, insurance industry, because the states are not responsible in this matter. That is a mistake of the insurers' insolvency should be. That's very important to remember that we have certain problems with the insolvencies in Poland, in Europe. In Poland, we had in 90s. It was very difficult for the insurance industry. Michael, you remember for sure. But this was a good lesson how not to run the insurance business. The last insolvency was in year 2000, and we still are paying the compensation from the insolvencies from the past, and we have the reserves for the many, many years in the future. As you know, they are the companies, they are operating on basis of freedom of service and freedom of establishment. On the screen, you see the examples of the bankrupt companies only from the last years. Or maybe the Hungarian math was a bit earlier because it is from the last 15 years, but this is only what finished officially with the bankruptcy. We know that there are some difficulties in Europe at this moment regarding the insurers, and the problem relates to this activity on freedom of service, freedom of establishment, because in such situation there is a problematic how to control such activity. Because the company has a seat in one country and operates in another country when we are talking about the freedom of service online, or has own agents, but it's a subject of the supervision of the authorities of the home country. In the case of the freedom of establishment, it's a bit easier because it's necessary to set up a branch office. But from the formal point of view, from the directive I mentioned at the beginning about the solvency, this is exactly the same system. Only the authorities of the home country are responsible to control such company. And the authorities of the, let's say, operating country can only ask to take any measures. What could be the consequences? The consequences are very significant. Probably you know Poland is a country in Central Europe, quite big. We have more than 23 million of the vehicles, 38 million of the citizens, so the market is relatively big. There are several companies from different countries. They want to operate on freedom of service and freedom of establishment. It's not bad. AXA is operating, for example. AIG is operating. So there are many companies, they are doing business. And this is, from the practical point of view, possible, and it works. The problem starts at this moment when such company went bankrupt. One me survived, for example, let's take the example of Dutch IIF, what was a big surprise in Europe. Rich country, a lot of money, famous companies, and suddenly IIF insurance company went bankrupt by surprise of the authorities, never checked this company. And this, it's true. And this company operates on basis of freedom of service. And in Netherlands, they had less than 10,000 policies, but they had around more than 50,000 policies in Germany, 16,000 in Spain, 16,000 in France, and some others, that doesn't matter. And as you see, in Europe, we can move free. We are traveling across all Europe with the same car, with the same policy, insurance cover. And we had a lot of problems how to satisfy the victims, how to find if the vehicle was insured, who will pay the consequences of the bankruptcy, and so on and so on. The next story, is it on a screen? Where is Great Britain? Oh, no, Great Britain is not Denmark. Alpha and Kudos. This is the story from last year. 2 Danish companies went bankrupt. They operated exactly on the same at the same model, cash flow. Almost nothing in Denmark, everything outside. Especially Alpha case was very dramatic because they were specialized in Great Britain and offered very attractive policies for fleets, especially taxi drivers. And suddenly, in one day, they were without any cover. There were the protests of taxi drivers in London. This was really dramatic for them. Really, really dramatic. But apart of this, this relates to secure the rights of the insured persons. This is one of the examples. The another one is there were claims. Who should pay for the claims? Another one was Kudos. A few months later, operating exactly at the same, using the same model. Now there is another company from Denmark. I will not give the name. Especially active in Poland, offering very good prices. But there is a big scandal because the victims, they have a real problem to reach anybody who will settle the claim. And what was the statement of the representative of this company from Denmark? Don't worry, in the case of the bankruptcy, the Polish Guarantee Fund will pay the compensation.
Bravo.
A scandal. It's a real scandal. What is the reaction of the Danish authorities? Zero. Zero. So such provisions regarding the what to do in such cases, I think it's a good sign that somebody at least wants to do something, not only for the victims, but what is example also for the insurance industry, to know, to give a clear provisions who is responsible for what. They will be clear written that the authorities of the home country of the insurance company will be responsible finally, and the guarantee fund of this country will be finally responsible for the financial consequences of the bankruptcy. And this is something what is really, really positive. At least something. So, the rest will be presented by Michael. Thank you very much.